Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome back to Reading with Raptors. This morning I am back in our program room with our resident turkey vulture we call Nero. He is right now working on finding some little pieces of rat that I hid underneath kind of an old leftover egg kind of carton flat that I've turned upside down and put some little tidbits under. So he can work on getting those out of there, so just pulling it out of the way. And is now looking for those little pieces that have kind of fallen out. So he's working on that. While we are kind of waiting for maybe some more folks to come on, we're going to be reading a book about vultures today, which is very time appropriate because this Saturday is International Vulture Awareness Day, a very important day every year where we remember and think about the really big importance that vultures and other scavengers especially have in our environment. Especially important in lots of parts of the world where vultures are an endangered species, and multiple species of vultures are endangered species, in many cases critically endangered, having lost a very large portion of their population over the last just few decades. So these birds are very, very important to the environment, and really need to make sure that we're taking really good care of them and making a healthy environment for them so that they can do the same and help create and maintain a healthy environment for us and other creatures out in the environment. So we'll talk a little bit about vultures while we are reading, good morning everyone, while we are reading Vulture Verses, Love Poems for the Unloved. This is a book that I've been kind of keeping in my back pocket for a while, that I found kind of early on when I was going through our books, and I'm really excited because it talks about a lot of different decomposers, maybe a lot of animals and creatures that we maybe don't think about as often, or maybe don't want to think about as often, but still play a really important role in the environment. So we're gonna read this. He's gonna work on this nice little piece of rat. We'll talk about him in a little bit. I also have some other fun kind of toys for him to play with, since normally sitting here gets a little bit boring for a turkey vulture, so we'll see. He also, one note before we begin too, he was also looking around, trying to look underneath this kind of cabinet area. So if you see him kind of poking around back there, he might just be trying to see what's under there. So it might be interesting. So let's get started. This is Vulture Verses, Love Poems for the Unloved, written by Diane Lang and illustrated by Lauren Gallegos. So let's begin. Let's see if I can get a little closer actually. Here we go. Friendship notes. They're so deserved by friends out in the wild who do so much but seldom get a thank you or a smile. I will tell them right away we know the good they do. They might be surprised to get a note out of the blue. So here is somebody writing some letters and a turkey vulture perching on a branch nearby. We have a couple other creatures actually up close. Looks like a spider. There's a little bug on the windowsill. Let's see what else we have. Turkey vulture, please be mine, not because you soar so fine, but 'cause you rock on cleanup crew. No rot is left when you are through. Just by eating what has died, you kill the germs that grow inside. You deserve, it can be said, a pat upon your bare red head. And here below it says, turkey vultures not only clean up carrion, which yes means dead stuff, but their digestive systems kill any germs that may be there. They keep animals, and maybe us, from getting sick. So here is a picture of a turkey vulture with that bare little red head sitting on top of a tree looking down at a carcass that they maybe just helped finish cleaning off. Very important, turkey vultures. Little mole, you leave a hole, but you have a bigger role. You sift the dirt as you proceed to hunt each bug or centipede. You don't eat plants or tender shoots. You leave alone the growing roots. You look solely for the critters that might serve as moly fritters. Cutworm larvae, beetles too, who might eat our gardens through. And you mix the healthy dirt, and really, does one molehill hurt? Even more, they can be flattened, as our mole friends become fattened on that dinner underground. So please, dear mole, do stick around. Here it says, the rumors about moles eating plants is not true. They really eat the bugs and slugs that cause the plant damage. They might make your lawn look less than perfect where they push the dirt from their burrows to the surface, but they do no harm. So here is a picture of a mole eating a nice centipede, eating all sorts of those small animals. And you can see these very big claws that they have up front, these big, heavy feet. Somebody pointing out that they can hear a merlin. Yes, I think I could hear a merlin in the background as well. So here we have a mole. A couple of different kinds of moles here in the upper Midwest. Lots of moles around the world doing that important insect hunting. Spider, I could give you hugs because you eat those garden bugs and insects who might sting or bite, but I won't try to squeeze you tight, lest I squash a friend so fine. So go on spinning out your line of silk to catch those insects who gobble leaves my garden through. If it weren't for spiders, we would be up to our knees in insects. If you find a spider in your house, help it safely outside so it can keep up its good work. So you can see all these chewed on leaves that other insects have been eating, and there's a spider making its web, being able to catch those bugs and help keep our gardens and our leaves all nice and intact. Hi from Belgium. Hello, that's fantastic. Well, welcome. Skunk, although you sometimes stink, you're sweeter than most people think. Because you eat each buggy pest that thinks my garden tastes the best. You chomp each beetle on the vine, so be, dear skunk, my Valentine. Skunks eat large numbers of insects that are considered harmful to humans. They especially like cockroaches and often dig up and eat yellow jacket larvae. So here's a skunk out in the moonlight. You can see its stripes on its tail and its body, looking for a tiny little bug that's going to eat. Skunks will eat all sorts of different things. They'll eat plants, but a lot of times they're eating those animals and those bugs. Lots of different kinds of food. Here's one that affects us a lot here at the Raptor Center, especially this time of year. Oh, fly, though no one thinks to ask, recycling is your secret task. You eat the things that die or spoil and make them part of growing soil. So though I shoo you from my plate, you're someone I appreciate. Flies are specialists at eating things that are dead and decaying, getting them ready to become part of new, healthy soil. So here it looks like it's part of an apple core. Here is a decaying apple with a fly that's eating on it. They'll also lay their eggs, which hatch into the larvae or maggots, and those are also great at breaking down things that have died or are decaying. So decaying plants, along with decaying carcasses or dead animals. Very important. Get a nice close-up view of our turkey vulture. Dear snake, some people run or yelp. Instead, I thank you for your help. You guard our food, from beans to rice, by eating all those rats and mice. So I'll not fuss, I'll let you be. Please slither on with love from me. They may be unfamiliar or even scary to us, but snakes are very important to keeping nature's balance. And only 10 to 15% of snake species worldwide are venomous. So a lot of times we think of snakes as being really scary, but here they are doing their actual job, which is looking or sniffing for these mice, especially those that are living around the food that we eat. That's normally where we see a lot of rats and mice and small rodents hanging out, is near where we have all of our food stored, because they want to eat that food too. So having snakes around to eat those mice, it's like free pest control. They're doing great work. Jay, you can be naughty bird, but still I loved you when I heard that some lost acorns that you hide will sprout new oak trees far and wide, which then give shade where each bough bends and homes for other feathered friends. Jays sometimes rob other birds' nests, but they are responsible for the growth of new trees for more nests. They hide acorns and other nuts and sometimes forget where they put them. Many forgotten ones sprout and grow into trees. So here is a jay, not the blue jay that we would see here in most of the upper Midwest, but a different kind of jay. This actually looks a lot like maybe a Steller's jay? I'm not sure exactly what kind of jay this is supposed to be, but we have a couple different kinds of jays across here in North America and worldwide. Very important. They are members of the crow family, so very colorful examples of very small crow cousins. I don't know if you can see, he's like fully behind me right now. You buzz around, you bite my arm. I must admit you do some harm. But Mosquito, let's note too, there is some good in what you do. You pollinate as you go round, helping plants spring from the ground. Helping plants spring from the ground. I will, behind my screen shut tight, give you a hand, but not to bite. Yes, even mosquitoes have their place. Like many other insects, they pollinate, and only the females bite. I will also point out too, mosquitoes are such a great food source for so many of our other animals. Things like bats, especially, I know, are big ones. We have lots of insects that rely on mosquitoes as food. Lots of animals. Oh, someone pointed out scrub jay. Yeah, that looks about right for a scrub jay, I think. Yeah, nice. But yes, even mosquitoes, I'm sure anybody watching from Minnesota can sympathize. Even mosquitoes play an important role in the ecosystem. Reduce, reuse, recycle is what we're supposed to do. Using things yet once again and making old things new. And you're the champ of doing that, dear cockroach on the ground. You munch what rots on forest floor wherever dead stuff's found. You make things into smaller bits for turning into soil. A big, big job for little you. Thanks for all your toil. But may I say, now that we're here, though you can glow with pride, we recycle on our own. Please don't come inside. It says cockroaches have a very important role in maintaining the energy cycle that returns nutrients from dead plants and animals to the soil. So here is a cockroach living in where we hope cockroaches would mostly live, outside. So here it is looking like it's feasting on the rotting remains of some plants. So we have some grasses, some mushrooms, we have some dead trees. Looks like maybe it's working on that wood. So some very, very important jobs for our cockroaches. How kind are you, O vampire bat? We need to copy good deeds that you do for others in your group, like giving hungry friends some soup and taking orphans to your care. Though small, you're big enough to share. You live a way that does inspire, and so I praise you and admire. These tiny flying mammals of Central and South America share food with other bats in the colony who did not get enough to eat. Yes, they regurgitate or throw up their blood meal and adopt others' orphans. Their saliva makes their small bite painless to the cattle or chickens they take blood from. They are rarely interested in the blood of humans. So these are vampire bats. And they do share blood with other bats who couldn't get enough. They'll adopt baby bats that maybe have lost their parents. They also have some very cool way of moving around on the ground. Some very cool videos of scientific studies looking at how vampire bats are able to kind of scuttle around on the ground, because it is fairly unique amongst bats. So bats, very important. Your stinger is like Cupid's arrow, very sharp and very narrow. But sharpness doesn't quite compare with what you give us from the air. I love the blooms you pollinate, the honey sweet upon my plate. So I'll ignore your sharpest end, because, dear bee, you're such a friend. Do you like melons, peaches, pears? Bees pollinate these fruits and many more, gathering pollen as they seek out sweet nectar. We owe them a big thank you. So here is a bee coming away from this flowering plant, and you can see here on its legs, it's got the pollen from those plants gathered up, so when it goes to visit more flowers on the same kind of plant, some of that pollen will transfer, and that will allow those fruits to grow. That's how they pollinate those other plants. That's That's what allows us to get a lot of the food that we need to eat from these pollinating insects or bees. I love you, bat. You eat in Maine those moths who dine on fields of grain. And then mosquitoes you devour, sometimes 600 in an hour. Some bats, straight to the fruit you go. When you drop seeds, more fruit will grow. So thanks for eating what you do. My loving heart goes out to you. Without bats, we would be harvesting much less grain, including the wheat, rice, and corn we need to make bread, cereal, and other food. Bats use echolocation to grab hungry moths and mosquitoes right out of the air. So here's a field of grain with a bat chasing down a moth, and it has its mouth open, maybe to grab onto the mouth, but also this is how they echolocate, by making very, very high-pitched noises. So they're basically yelling really, really loudly at a really, really high pitch. It bounces off of the moth and goes back into these big ears, and they can actually hear where the moth is. And that works for other insects like mosquitoes as well. So bats are very important for catching a lot of insects. Some of them also help to pollinate. One of the famous things that a lot of them will pollinate are various fruits, as well as agave, which is a very important crop for a major part of Central America, especially in Mexico. So very important pollinators for a lot of our bats as well. One of my favorites. On nighttime visits, possums go, searching down each garden row. For snails and slugs they find sublime. So dear opossum, please be mine. Come through my garden any day, or night, I mean your time to play. These nocturnal marsupials are omnivores. They eat everything. They are especially fond of plant-eating snails and slugs, so gardeners can welcome a visit from them. So here is an opossum with that big long tail looking around in this garden, and here's a little snail trying to crawl away. So they're looking for that. Another thing that opossums are really good at eating are actually ticks. Which again, here in the upper Midwest and around a lot of places in North America at least, we have a lot of ticks, and those ticks can carry diseases that can make us really sick. So opossums are actually eating those ticks and keeping us safe, which is very important. So many more cards to write, so many animal friends. I may need some help. Do you know someone who is misunderstood? Will you help me write some friendship notes too? And here's a quote. There is nothing ugly in nature. The seeming exceptions are simply facts of beauty we have not yet grasped. And that is a quote from Freeman Tilden. So there are lots of misunderstood animals out there. Our scavengers definitely being one of them. So our scavengers in a lot of these kind of small, especially nocturnal, but other things that are eating a lot of the insects and helping to decay and decompose things, oftentimes misunderstood. And they have a lot of adaptations or kind of physical or behavioral features that help them do their jobs, but to us maybe seem a little bit gross, maybe a little bit icky, like our turkey vultures being a great example. Here, I'll see if I can put some food in this. I have a dog toy here. So they have, for example, that kind of bald, here, this way. Figuring out the mirroring is always hard. So here, his little bald head. So that's actually really important for sticking his head inside of other animals once they've died. He needs to be able to get that head inside of those dead animals, and that's really important. So here we'll see if he gives us a good example of that as he uses that clever beak to figure out how to get that piece of rat out of this kind of dog toy ball. So the featherless head is really important for being able to stick his head inside of carcasses. So say you have a dead deer and you need to kind of get inside of it to be able to get all of that good meat out of there before it really starts to really decompose. He's going to help with that by sticking his head in there. And if you have big long feathers on your head, it's kind of like if you have big long hair, you don't want to stick your head into a big thing of mud. It's going to take forever to get out. But if you have a bald head or really short hair, not as big of a deal. It washes off way easier. So that is why these turkey vultures, for example, have these kind of bald heads or really short feathers on their heads. So that way they can stick their heads inside of things that are decomposing without getting all of that kind of rotting gunk stuck in those feathers where they can't reach. So a lot of those adaptations that these scavengers or maybe misunderstood animals have are actually really important. Somebody asked one of my favorite questions always, which is, why are old world vultures in the accipitry day? So there's basically the way that scientists classify birds and other animals and plants and really all living organisms into kind of their genetic cousins. So who they're kind of related to. So we have the big order, a really, really, really big family. Think of a really big extended family reunion with tons of cousins, maybe some people that you've never met before, but you know you're somehow related. That's like an order, which is where a lot of our daytime raptors are, other than our falcons and our owls, but all of our hawks and eagles and harriers and kites and our vultures are all in this one big order. And then there's a family within that. There's a few families within that. So think at your big family reunion with tons of families, and then you have like your actual family that you maybe live with, or the cousins that you see pretty often that you kind of know a little bit better, you're a little bit closer to. You don't have to go back tons of generations to figure out who your closest relative is. You don't have a great-great-great-grandma in common. You maybe just have a grandma in common. So that is what we might call a family when we are classifying these animals. And so the family accipitry day includes all of our hawks, our eagles, harriers, kites, and all of our what we call old world vultures. So all of the vultures that, pretty much every vulture that lives outside of North, Central, and South America. So our European, Asian, African, and Australian vultures are all grouped in with our hawks, eagles, harriers, and kites. And that is just because they kind of have closer relatives. So they have that grandma in common, whereas our New World vultures, like our turkey vultures and our black vultures and our condors that live here in North, Central, and South America, you have to go back a little bit farther. They maybe have a great-great-grandma in common with our other hawks and eagles, those kinds of birds. So they're a little bit more distantly related, still cousins, but might have to go back a little bit farther. So they have a couple of differences that kind of fit in with this that you might expect. So our old world, or kind of our European, Asian, African, Australian vultures, they have a little bit stronger gripping feet. They're still able to kind of hold onto things a little bit better with their feet, whereas as you're watching this bird, he can use his feet and his talons to hold on to what he's doing, but he can't really grip on with them very well. They mostly just kind of lay flat or kind of hold on to something. They don't really grip onto what he's trying to manipulate here with this dog toy. These birds have a couple other differences, one of which is one of my favorite things, is they don't actually have the organ that birds use to make sound. It's called a syrinx. We have a larynx, we have our voice box kind of right up here in our throat where kind of if you touch your throat, you can hear it vibrating while we talk. Birds have an organ that's kind of similar. It works the same as if you blow up a balloon and then let the air out and kind of play with the opening of the balloon. It makes all sorts of fun, different squeaky noises. It's kind of how a syrinx works. It's like a lot of balloon necks in a row that they're kind of squeezing, opening, and closed to make sound. Our New World vultures, they don't have one. So they can't actually make this kind of song-like or screaming sounds that other birds can make. The only noises that this bird can make are little kind of grunts and hissing noises. So that's a big difference. They also will do what's called urohydrosis, a fun vocab word, urohydrosis, which means that they can cool themselves off by actually urinating or eliminating their waste, going to the bathroom on their own legs. So you can see down here on his legs, he doesn't have feathers all the way down to his feet. He has feathers kind of only going down to about where his ankle joint is. And so what he's able to do is if he gets warm, he can actually put some of his own waste onto his legs, and it works just like when we sweat. We sweat and that liquid on our skin evaporates and that cools us off. When he gets to that liquidy waste onto his legs, it'll evaporate and that'll cool him off. Same thing as we do when we sweat. So urohydrosis is kind of unique to our New World, or our North, Central, and South American vultures. So there are lots of differences, but all of this is to say that these vultures are not as closely related to our other daytime non-falcon raptors as our Old World or European, Asian, African, and Australian vultures. It's a very, very long answer to that question. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, though, because I really, really like figuring out and learning how different animals or different organisms are related. It's one of my personal favorite topics, so I'll try not to get too bogged down with it. I'll see if there were other questions that I missed earlier on. Yeah, nothing so far. I'll see. Maybe I can tilt this down a little bit. I'm trying to not tip the camera over like I did last week. So he's just hanging out down here working on this nice piece of rat that he's ripping apart. So he's holding onto it with his feet, just as other raptors would. So very important for him to hold onto it with his feet and those talons. His talons aren't as kind of long and sharp, and those feet, again, really don't have a good grip strength like other raptors do. Because, again, they're mostly looking for things that have already died. So it's not as important for them to be able to kill things with their feet. They mostly just need to be able to stand on things and be able to use those that curved, sharp beak to tear it into pieces. So he's working on that. I wonder if I can just kind of move us a little bit closer here. Apologies for a temporary shaky camera, but I think it'll be worth it. Here we go. So I'll just kind of hold this here. So he's working on that nice piece of rat, and you can see he's actually taking some very nice kind of small bites of it. So he's not taking the huge big chunks that you might see as much. He's got a very long kind of narrow beak. Still has the curved kind of sharp point on the end like other raptors have. So very important. Actually, see if I can rotate here a little bit. Realize that the actual toy was in the way so we couldn't actually see. So vultures worldwide are so important, and this is what we think about on our International Vulture Awareness Day. Again, in some parts of the world, especially across kind of the Middle East, kind of southern part of Europe, the Middle East, and into the Indian subcontinent area, all of the vulture species there, many of them have lost up to 90 to 99% of their population just over the last few decades. The main reason being that as we're trying to increase the health of our cattle herds, people are using a lot more of a kind of pain relief that's called diclofenac, and that particular chemical in cows works great, but if those cows die and are left out and vultures come down to scavenge off of their bodies, that particular chemical is actually really, really bad for vultures. And so if they eat even just that small amount that's remaining in those dead cattle, it can actually cause a lot of damage, and those vultures can actually die very quickly. So we've been seeing this major crisis all across some major parts of the world where we're seeing way fewer vultures in just a short period of time, which is really bad for people because then we have a lot of dead things laying around. So not only do you have dead carcasses that are remaining out in the environment up to 4 times longer without our scavenging vultures, so they're able to spread diseases. But another issue that we're seeing is that they are, because we have these sources of food laying out, we have more problems with other animals such as feral dogs. So these feral dogs now have more food, so we're seeing more feral dogs, and that means that more people are coming into contact with dogs that may have rabies. So just because we're missing vultures, kind of causes this chain of events where we end up having more people getting rabies, a very, very dangerous disease, just because we're missing some of our vultures. So these vultures have a really big, important effect on the ecosystem, and losing them creates this really big ripple effect. Kind of like if you drop a stone into a pond, those ripples can go out quite a ways. And we're seeing that especially with vultures and kind of what happens to areas that don't have as many of these vultures. So even though if you're looking at this and you're going, ugh, I don't know, that's kind of gross, it's still a really important job that these birds are doing out in the wild. And you can see he's cleaning every last piece of meat off of this little chunk of rib cage in between each of the individual ribs. He's really getting every piece of meat that he can. So these birds are really doing a great job out in the wild. Again, decomposing and starting that decomposition process, really breaking up that food into smaller pieces so it's easier for things like bacteria or insects or fungi to help break down those dead carcasses. So they're doing a very important job out there in the wild. And again, those adaptations or those features that we might think are a little bit gross, those are actually the things that are helping them do that very important job. And it's not just helping the rest of the environment, it's helping us too. That's all really connected. So really important to have this major piece in place. So thinking about as we get into, especially for our International Vulture Awareness Day, but all the time, thinking about how important these individual animals are to our environment. Super important. Similar to how other raptors are important to the environment by kind of acting as our free pest control. You don't want too many mice and rats and rabbits around, so having our owls and our hawks out hunting them is super important because they can have a big effect on the ecosystem too if there are too many of them. So he's just gonna work on kind of finishing picking at all these last little bits of food. He'll go back out into his big spot. Hopefully it's a little bit sunnier out so he can get some good sun, maybe take a good bath. It's kind of dreary out earlier for anybody else here in the Twin Cities area at least. So hopefully he'll get outside and do some good sunning. Another great behavioral adaptation that turkey vultures do to help kind of bake off any remaining pieces of meat that might be stuck on their feathers, can kind of help to bake those off, especially out of areas that they cannot reach on their own. And so they're able to keep themselves a little bit cleaner by sitting out in the sun, helps them stay warm, helps them get a lot of the vitamin D that they need, and then it will also help to clean off their feathers. So very important behavior that we'll see turkey vultures doing all summer here and all year round in southern parts of the United States. I don't think I got any other questions. So I want to wrap up there looking at this turkey vulture as he's kind of finishing poking at the rest of his food. But again, everyone, looking forward to, I'm sure we'll be posting more about vulture awareness for this weekend, for that big day for turkey or for vultures worldwide. But definitely I'll drop a link to the kind of the main foundations, and I'm sure we will as well, who are helping to preserve vultures worldwide. So you can check out more information on how vultures are doing all around the world. Otherwise, keep an eye out on both our Facebook page and our website, theraptorcenter.org. We're going to be posting more information as we get into the school year. We have some really exciting online programs that we've been working on that we're really excited to be able to bring to you all. So definitely keep an eye out for those and those announcements as well, so you can see what's going on, along with all of the other online programs that we've been doing, especially those Zoomies or those Zoom bombs that we've been doing with birds, which is always very cool and very exciting to do. So keep an eye out for those and more information. Otherwise, we will see you all next week for more Reading with Raptors. Have a great week until then, everyone. We'll see you soon.